Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the Dr. Diane Show, we have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. I'm excited today to have Uzma Zakir. She is a registered pharmacist and founder of bloomHigher, and she is passionate about sharing her expertise on the healing benefits of the cannabis plant to educate and empower people on their brave choice to use cannabis as their medicine. By combining current research, her experience in treating patients in the CT MMJ landscape since 2015, and her traditional pharmacy background, she has developed a unique approach for patient care and speaks extensively on best practices in cannabinoid science. In 2023, she presented at UConn's Expo Canna NECANN, the National Cannabis Festival, and the Cannabis Science Conference. Usma hosted a popular monthly webinar until she left the corporate cannabis world to start her own endeavor to bring the plant back to the people. She is now in private practice in collaboration with 2 internal medicine physicians in Stamford, Connecticut at Ultimate Solutions Medical Spa, and she provides care for those with chronic illness, anxiety, cannabis use disorder, autism, and much more. Usma serves on the board of directors for the Recovery Network of Programs in Bridgeport, a nonprofit social service agency that has been providing critical recovery care and support to the greater Bridgeport community for 50 years. So welcome, Usma. How are you today?
Doing really well. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah, awesome. So we have some fascinating stuff to talk about today, but I usually like to start with your background, like so you traditional, as far as like pharmacy degree and career, how did you make that leap? I mean, did something happen, or just tell us what your journey was like?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, traditionally trained pharmacist. I was working retail pharmacy for over a decade. And it was during the opioid epidemic, and I was in an inner city neighborhood, and we saw just the ravishing effects of it daily, from the physicians to the insurance fraud issues to, of course, what was happening to individuals in the community. Literally, you would see, a hardworking young woman come in with, maybe she fell and broke her ankle, and then she came in with a prescription for opioids, and 6 months later you have a different person. And at that time, I was also doing a lot of research on alternative and natural medications for my own children and for myself, that it got to the point where I was giving out medications that I actually really wouldn't give to myself or my family members. And I realized there was a disconnect here, and I was looking to make a change so I could practice more in line with my values. Around that time, fortunately, Connecticut rolled out its medical marijuana program. And what they did was something unique in the country, in that the Connecticut medical marijuana program is a pharmaceutical model. So they didn't just decriminalize cannabis. What they did was they actually made it a Schedule II. So they had pharmacists and pharmacy techs doing the dispensing and really treating it like a controlled substance, like prescription. And so that was a unique segue for me to see what was going on in the cannabis space. And it's something that I had always believed in as medicine. They were doing a lot in California, but not much on the East Coast. And of course, it was really hard, and it still is, to access really accurate information that's not just anecdotal by just what patients are saying. So that experience, I started at the Compassionate Care Center in Bethel, Connecticut. It was really like a mama and pop establishment, and it was just beautiful. And it still is just the most rewarding experience of my life, and really set me on the trajectory that I've been on, where you really see amazing results. And when patients would share their stories, it was so moving. And then people would really come in and tell us when they would sit down for a consultation on, what to use and how to use it. An overwhelming number of people would say, this is my last resort. I have tried everything. They have to, what people go through, what our brothers and sisters in humanity are suffering with, it really touched me. And I felt like I had a tremendous responsibility to really honor their path. And that's when I really started learning everything that I could. So reading studies and papers, and putting it together with the medicated products that we had in Connecticut, because of course, nothing can cross state lines. And then just working and connecting with patients. And I would say the major changes were consistent and consecutive dosing and really using minor cannabinoids. So and we'll talk more about this later, but non-THC products from the plant and using them in conjunction with the counseling and kind of the hand holding for the first 2 to 4 weeks, because it's such individualized dosing. You really don't know what a person is going to need until you work with them and you get some follow-ups and you get feedback from them. So then I started really noticing that the self-care and adding the spirituality aspect to healing, because cannabis is such a great consciousness expander, and really people were starting to get in touch with themselves, that combining it with certain practices, I really just saw people just do better than they have, and they've said it themselves, and for some of them a couple of months, years, and even decades. And that just really kept me going and being so passionate about seeing what else I can do. So here we know what these cannabinoids can do, but what's the potential? What if we do it this dose? What if we do it this way? And it's just been so remarkable, the outcomes, that I'm going to keep going.
Yeah, it's pretty, I think what's really amazing that I want to, make sure people don't miss is just your background as a pharmacist. It's pretty rare that you see a pharmacist even like do anything with natural medicine. I know a couple that are compounding pharmacists, but it's pretty rare that you see someone trained in traditional pharmacy go down this path of even being open to natural products, let alone something like medical cannabis. So I think you're very unique. And I love the fact that you're doing what you're doing, because I think you're like a bridge for people who maybe did have the wrong idea about cannabis or medical cannabis, or maybe, had just some prejudice about it or whatever. And now here's a person like yourself with your degrees and your experience basically saying, look, this is a huge, really untapped potential for people who are suffering with pain or all different types of other types of illnesses, anxiety, that kind of thing, to use this versus some of these prescription drugs that are just awful.
Yeah. Just side effects alone, right? We have some untoward effects that we know how to avoid, but when you're using something that's working with your body and you're using it safely, with direction, I don't know, it is being a pharmacist, it's great because I can review everyone's medication lists and really identify new symptoms from side effects. And I think that's something that we need more of. A lot of people think that they're developing new symptoms, but when they really understand what their disease state is causing, it's so eye-opening for them. It's amazing when I talk to patients about PTSD, for example, and I'll say, okay, well, you were diagnosed with PTSD this many years ago. What do you know about it? And they don't know much. So if they're not getting that counseling at their doctor's office, so I always like to remind people that PTSD is not just an anxiety disorder, it's a memory processing disorder. And our natural cannabinoids in our central nervous system really modulate and regulate how we process memories. So from that pharmacy background, being able to tie in physiology and of course side effects and mechanism of action of other medications, and then explaining the cannabinoid science, I think it does help bridge that gap for people and really help them feel good about the choice that they're about to make to start trying to see if cannabis is right for them.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm sure we could spend a whole podcast alone on just explaining to people what the whole endocannabinoid system is within the body, physiologically, how that all works. Could you kind of put it into some simple terms that people can
Absolutely.
understand. Yeah, and why is it so important? You know, how does it work versus using that versus like an opioid or some other type of pain
Okay,
medication?
yeah, we'll use pain as the example because that is a really great example. So just like we all have a cardiovascular system, we all have an endocannabinoid system. And cannabinoids are, I guess you could say they're molecules. They're released on demand in our central nervous system, our immune system, and even our skin cells and our tissues and our organs. And it's because we have these receptors that are like the locks, and these cannabinoids are the keys. So these cannabinoid receptors, which are like the locks, we actually have more receptors for cannabinoids in our central nervous system than for anything else. It's remarkable. The endocannabinoid system is now being considered the endocannabinoid dome. I'm not really sure because that's how prevalent it is in the human body. So it's this complex molecular signaling system with neuromodulatory functions, which means it actually helps protect our nerve cells, and also it protects our nerve cells against inflammation and degradation. So we have more receptors for these cannabinoids than for anything else, but we've kind of been cut off from this plant for a couple of generations now. And so if this endocannabinoid system is responsible, basically what it does, it scans all of your different physiological functions. And if something is off, meaning if something is too high or too low, it'll come into play just to bring it back to balance. And that is why you don't see side effects like you do from pharmaceuticals. So a pharmaceutical will come in and perhaps turn on a physiological pathway or off, regardless of how it is doing. Cannabinoids will only affect something that is disrupted. So it helps our cells communicate with one another more quickly, more effectively, and a whole slew of different functions. So if we look at pain, for example, and you compare it to an opioid, so an opioid is certainly a painkiller, releases some endorphins. But what cannabinoids do on our pain processing pathway, which is very complicated in the human body, it actually affects every single stage of the human pain processing pathway, how our central nervous system receives the signals, how they interpret it, and then also what they decide to do about it. So one of the reasons, and countless studies have proven this, is that most people do prefer cannabinoid therapy over opioids, because not only is it more effective pain relief, but it's better for your mood. You become a nicer person. I've had spouses come and tell me, oh, I have my husband back after 20 years. He's been sitting on the recliner, injured, and now his personality's back. So you see people's relationships start to improve. And that's something that I like to focus on as well. So the endocannabinoid system, complex molecular signaling system, also present in our pets, right? In our dogs, for example. So it's really remarkable that it's been untapped for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in, listen, there's a lot out there in terms of plant medicine that we have not even discovered. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't tell me that, ancient civilizations, or even in our country, Native American Indians were using these things all the time. And now, we're going to say, nope, the drugs are better. And, and to me, it's like, if this system is in the body already with all of these receptors, there has to be a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were obviously using this and it was working. So this is so fascinating. I'm excited to get into a lot more of this discussion with you about medical cannabis. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore more with Uzma Zakir. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at either www.drdianehayden.com or either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Uzma Zakir at www.bloomHigher.com. That's BLOOM-HIGHER.com. So welcome back, Usma. How are you again?
I am great.
We were just talking about, before we broke, just how in my mind, like this plant medicine has been around forever. We have all these receptors for it. I mean, to me, there's a purpose for it. But I'm sure that there are people listening that are still thinking like, yeah, but I've either never tried it before. I don't really want to smoke something, inhale something into my lungs, or, the the popular belief is like, oh, if I start smoking pot, or if my husband does, or wife or whatever, they're going to be like crashed on the couch eating chips all day and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's just get right to the point with that. And I want your medical, like opinion,
Yeah.
and how you feel about that, and what you tell people who have those concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, the delivery systems, right? I would say it's not about smoking or vaping anymore. You never have to smoke or vape or inhale anything to get the full benefit of the cannabis plant. So that could be a tablet, it could be a capsule, it could be an oral solution or a tincture, it could be a topical. And some of the oils are really probably what I use most. So I always usually look for a full spectrum. And that could be something that's high in CBD with little to no THC. So I think that just so everyone, I just wanted to say this part quickly, is that the cannabis plant, the molecular components are called cannabinoids, and there's over 100 cannabinoids to the plant, THC being only one of them, and the only one that has a psychoactive effect, interestingly enough. Within the last few decades, plants have been bred to be higher in THC than some of the other cannabinoids like CBD or CBG, where naturally, when we're talking about indigenous medicine, naturally it wasn't as psychoactive as present day cannabis. So that I think is something really interesting to note, that when you use the right ratio and the right balance of different cannabinoids, and that's really what I specialize in, is understanding the individual's needs and their preferences, maybe comparing it to some other medications that they're taking. If they're taking a lot of benzodiazepines or opioids, for example, they'll have a different tolerance, because there is a cross tolerance. So understanding that it's definitely not about smoking and vaping and getting high. This is the more medicinal aspect of it, where we use different cannabinoids to achieve things like fighting inflammation, controlling, even IBS and so many other conditions. I actually love working with patients who have been using cannabis prior to seeing me, and maybe they're only been using THC. And I think a misconception is that that's what you need to get well. And I love adding different cannabinoids to someone who's only been using THC and see the improvements that they make. It's pretty phenomenal, because a lot of people think, well, I'm using THC, I'm using medical cannabis. It's like, no, we can get it a little bit more kind of honed into exactly what you need throughout the day to stay ahead of your symptoms. As far as the couch lock and feeling unmotivated, if you smoke too much THC, absolutely that's going to happen. But again, that's not what I feel like. If people want to do that, they don't need my help necessarily. So, and I have a lot of patients who experience a lot of fatigue. Right. So this is a great example, whether it's fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic Lyme, even PTSD, and you get them on the right level of cannabinoids, you start fighting that inflammation, and they don't need a nap in the day anymore. It's one of my favorite things. I don't need to take a nap anymore. I can make it. I can make dinner. I can clean my house. And I never thought getting something from the pod store, right, they would say, is going to help me not be tired. And I said, yeah, we're getting you to sleep deeply through the night. We're fighting that inflammation, and it's remarkable to see. So again, it's using the right cannabinoids at the right time.
Yeah. I think another thing that's important is where are people getting this from, essentially, right? Like, obviously there's dispensaries now, there are, a ton of CBD stores and independent practitioners. I mean, what is your advice as far as like where people should go? I mean, I'm sure, obviously with you, we're talking about someone going for medicinal purposes. And obviously the benefit with you is that you're, a licensed practitioner, you're going to help them figure out what they should be taking based on what the issue is. So that is clearly one reason. But why would somebody say go to you versus going to, say, the CBD store?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did spend about 3 to 4 months sourcing what I think I found to be probably one of the best products that is available legally and can cross state lines. So those are the minor cannabinoids. I tried out a lot of different products for a few months. So really with this, It's about the quality of the extraction. You definitely want something that's organic, because as soon as it's pressed to release the oils, everything that's in that plant is getting concentrated. So you don't want to have your pesticides concentrated in your final product. So careful analysis of the COA, the certificate of analysis, that should come with each product, and then really getting to the right dose. So what I do is I'll spend that time with each individual. And kind of what my thing is, have me walk me through your day from the moment you wake up to when you go to sleep, if you go to sleep, with your physical issues, mental, and even emotional concerns. And then using the right cannabinoid self-care practices, also some dietary tips to help you be the best version of yourself, and again, stay ahead of your symptoms. That's really a big thing for people to understand, that shift in that narrative. A lot of people with anxiety, for example, who may take Xanax for panic attacks, they'll wait until their panic is so bad because they don't want to take that Xanax, and then they'll take that Xanax. Think about all that stress that your body has gone through and you've gone through in those hours of you trying to fight it on your own. Well, let's flip that. If you wake up in the morning with flight or flight and feelings of dread, I counsel patients to take their CBD right when they wake up, and you'll see how much better your morning goes. And that's been phenomenal. So that consistent consecutive dosing, the right ratio of cannabinoids at the right time of day for you and your individual schedule, is really empowering to people, because I feel like it's our small moments of our days that really add up to the quality of our life. And when we lose out on those small moments of, having to stay in bed and not being able to spend time with your children or make dinner or anything like that, that's the quality of your life, right there. So that's what I work really hard to give back to patients. So it's that immediate effect, but then there's that marathon approach through too, where I'm looking at the research and the science and really seeing how your long-term symptoms and your disease is going to hopefully prevent the progression and the severity of it.
Yeah, I love that. Very, very individualized approach for sure.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about pain management, about anxiety, PTSD. What other things do people come to you with? What other types of issues or illnesses that you've found this has been really helpful for?
Yeah, I would say for sure fibromyalgia, migraines, and IBS. So those three enigmatic disease states that are, of course, diagnosis of exclusion in Western medicine, right? So they say you don't have XYZ, so we'll call it a migraine. You don't have XYZ, we'll call it IBS. But these are severely damaging to patients, right? When you have a migraine multiple times a week, I've had patients come to me 3 to 5 debilitating migraines a week. IBS symptoms from 4 a.m. to 11 a.m. every single day. So they can't get their day started till 12 noon, for example. And of course, they've used many, many medications, lots of rounds of steroids, for example. So there's an amazing theory called the Clinical Endocannabinoid Deficiency theory, which I have used to really help with my methodology for a number of years with really remarkable results. So if we understand that the endocannabinoid system is there to help maintain homeostasis, well, what if we have a low endocannabinoid tone? Or what if our endocannabinoid system is not functioning well? We're going to see hyperalgesic states, right? We don't have that normal pain threshold. So fibromyalgia, everything hurts. Migraines, my head hurts. IBS, my stomach hurts. So supplementing the endocannabinoid system to prevent the frequency and the severity, for example, of your migraines. So I've successfully taken patients from those 3 to 5 debilitating migraines a week to 1 or 2 a month. And we do that, pretty regularly. And with that therapy, they have anxiety and stress relief throughout the day. Their aches and pains are going away because, again, we're covering the whole body. I've been doing a lot of really great work, I feel, with chronic Lyme, and that's been pretty phenomenal to see. I have a great case study, actually, of a patient who came in the end of September. She's in her early 50s. She was really struggling for quite some time. She did also have some PTSD, but she was even in a wheelchair at one point prior to me meeting with her. And she was, really, really, I guess, optimistic, ready to try, what the recommendations. She stuck to the program. In 2 weeks. 2 weeks, she felt so much better. She said, I've gone from surviving to thriving, and continues to do well. and loving her life again and loving herself again. And that's the best part.
Wow. So you mentioned a deficiency. Is there a way to measure that?
We don't have a way of measuring that yet. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So with the migraines, they did do a study a number of years ago where they did check the naturally occurring levels of one of our endocannabinoids. It's anandamide in women from the cerebrospinal fluid of women with chronic migraines and without. And they found the women with chronic migraines had like so much less, statistically significant less levels of that naturally occurring endocannabinoid. So that's not a typical test, but hopefully soon that there will be something.
Yeah, because I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'd like to know that, even if I don't have any symptoms or anything, or if I wasn't, like dealing with pain or whatever, it would be interesting to know that, because maybe that might, who knows if that's not a precursor to something down the road.
Yeah, I agree. And also like using the right cannabinoids, a supplement, you can almost kind of think of some of them like a vitamin, after you talk to someone like me and get that right dose and the right formulation to again stay ahead of that. Because then the idea is that we might all have slightly low functioning endocannabinoid systems, again, because because we've been deprived from any type of access for a few decades to the plant.
Oh, that's interesting too. If you look at it from an epigenetic perspective, right? Like, how many generations is this something that we should have been ingesting, for whatever reason, right?
Yeah, or even just growing it or working with it in your garden, and we used to use it for textiles and things. So
yeah. Wow. That is really fascinating. So I think we've busted some myths here, and hopefully made people, more comfortable if for whatever reason they weren't about it, learning more about this, which is it's really an amazing modality for sure. And we're going to get into a lot more of that. We're going to talk about some interesting case studies and just more about, I'm really curious about the whole spiritual component about it. So we'll probably get into that when we come back, but we're going to take another short break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about medical cannabis with Uzma Zakir. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking today about medical cannabis with Uzma Zakir. You can learn more about her at www.bloomHigher.com. That's BLOOM-HIGHER.com. So welcome back, Usma. We were getting into all of like the myths and misconceptions and learning about, endocannabinoid deficiency. And there was one thing that you said, I think maybe in our first segment, about a spiritual aspect. And I was really curious about that. So I want to kind of start there and talk a little bit about just, intuitive care and emotional support and the whole like spiritual aspect of working with medical cannabis.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm a firm believer that our emotional stress, our emotional burdens lead to physical illness. And so you really have to address, as you stated earlier, the mind, body, and the spirit. And and cannabis is really amazing. I think that we can all agree as a consciousness expander, where a lot of people think, oh, I'm going places and I'm seeing things. And I like to switch that around and say, that's actually what's inside yourself. You're able to see all of that beauty and that divinity inside of yourself. And that's really empowering for people, right? When they realize I have patients with chronic illness, especially dealing with Western medicine, they often have been kind of broken by the process. Oftentimes patients with sometimes complicated diagnosis, I like to ask them their diagnosis story, because I learned so much about them and how they feel about their illness. Some people they identify themselves as their illness. They start to hate the certain part of their body that may be giving them the pain and the issues. And that's really telling for their prognosis, right? It is, what is your attitude about yourself and your disease state and what it's doing to you. And so I really like to take that time to get people comfortable. I use flower essences. I do a little bit of energetic work, maybe a mantra, meditation, or a prayer to get started, to really get them to come back into themselves. And I feel like then I can get a lot more effective work done with them. So that's part of it. The second part of it is that a lot of
I
people
want to
will come.
actually, sorry, I want to just stop
Sure.
there just for a second, because I think it's something that you said is so important about people identifying with their illness and even getting like attached to it. Because you probably are familiar with Bernie Siegel. I mean, he's been in Connecticut for forever. He's, you know, gosh, he's got to be like 95 years old now or something, and he's still like, you know, bouncing around. But as a surgical oncologist, like when he left that career, he spent the rest of his life basically educating people and also surgeons and other physicians on the impact of words on the patient and what you said to the patient, and how when you give someone a terminal diagnosis, if you say that to them, the studies that have been done actually to say like, you know, 100% of everybody that was given a terminal diagnosis ended up passing away in a year, whereas a control group where they had the same terminal diagnosis, but they weren't told that, ended up living 5 more years or even are still alive. It's really, I really want to stress how important that is, because people think, I think people like laugh that off and they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like words don't have that much of an impact. But they really do. I mean, people really internalize things that are said to them, especially by, you know, a surgeon or a medical professional, people that we have high respect for or have, you know, give authority over to. And it's just, it's so important that we, you know, we realize that and don't, you know, okay, so I have this diagnosis. That is not who I am. That is not me. That is just something that's going on with my body right now. And I love how you said, you know, they, you know, people actually hate the part of their body. Well, think about what's happening in your body when you're having all those negative feelings to that particular area. You should be sending love to that area, right? Like,
Right. And that's exactly, it's sending love. And I think self-love is a concept that, you know, a lot of us have lost. And once I feel like I can ignite that pilot light, and I, you know, by the end of a session, I can see people's light coming back to their eyes and they're very present. And I say, hey, welcome back. There you are. I knew you were in there. And they can't believe how they, you know, it's positive, it's sincerity, right? I'm very sincere and it's the right words. And then to take it further, I found that a lot of people were coming to me saying, oh, I've tried to meditate. I've tried to do this. You know, they weren't really getting the benefit or the potential that is there from some of these practices, be it mindfulness, gratitude, yoga, you know, different types of spirituality. And that's because for most of us, either we can never get our mind calm. Right. So then people say that like, well, I can't get my mind calm to meditate. I want to meditate to get my mind calm. So how do you start? So I can help you get your mind calm, right? Maybe you're a THC person at night. Maybe you're a CBD person with just a little dash of THC in the morning, you know, or the mid-morning, depending on your routine. And then I'll say, okay, 20 to 30 minutes. Let's do this mantra. This is for you. Maybe I'll write something out. And they can replicate then maybe the meditation that we did together with more success, because you can actually kind of quiet down all of those racing thoughts and the chatter that's always going on in our minds. And people really benefit from that. And they're really appreciative to have that tool in their toolbox.
yeah, one thing as you're just saying that we really didn't touch on is this has got to be huge for people with insomnia or any kind of like sleep disorder or anything like that, right?
Absolutely. I always like to joke is like, you know, we can try to accomplish a lot of things. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get you to go to sleep. So we use a couple of things. We use THC, we use CBN. I do look into treating insomnia avoidance behaviors and insomnia anxiety, which usually hits people around dinner time. I like to make sure I offer the right recommendations for people to enjoy the evening with their families and to kind of forget about their day and move forward and make way for a better night of sleep, even using a smaller dose of CBD mid-morning to help them sleep at night later. So it's a couple of different things that I can do to help people, yeah, absolutely get that full night of sleep and wake up refreshed and not groggy.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a vicious cycle, because when you think about it, it's like, okay, you start to have a few nights of not being able to get to sleep. And then that just creates more stress, which prevents you from going to sleep. It's like,
That's right.
ah.
It spirals out of control. And
Yes.
once even if you're just sleeping well, that's going to be a huge advantage for your health going forward, right? Sleep is the cornerstone of our health.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So how do people learn about all this stuff? I mean, it's not taught in schools, right? So how did you even, we talked a little bit in the beginning, like how you got
Yeah.
introduced this and whatever, but where can people just go to learn more?
So that's the tricky thing, is finding the best information, the most accurate information. I really taught, I had some great mentors. Absolutely. The woman who founded the Compassionate Care Center in Bethel, her name is Angela D'Amico, and she studied in California 10 years prior to Connecticut even having a program. So she was way ahead of the curve. So I was really lucky to work under her and learn a lot from her. So really it started off back then like word of mouth. You learn from each other. And now, since the discovery of the endocannabinoid system in the early 90s, I think there's been like almost 20,000 published reports. So you can go to PubMed, you can go to Google Scholar, and you can see a ton of great information on cannabinoids. So it started with that, and then it started with learning from my patients. So people who had been doing these things for a long time, right? But it was illegal. So everyone was just doing it at home, not talking about it. But now there's great conferences. UConn has a program now. I was lucky enough to guest lecture and speak at their symposium last year. So the schools are catching up now. But it's really about like getting those curriculums written, and cannabis is a wide industry, right? So there's, of course, growing it, extracting it, making medicine, then of course the science and the physiology and helping people use it.
Yeah, I mean, that is got to be like, amazing amounts of information just to understand how the system works when you were talking about all these different receptors and things. I mean, probably even stuff that we still haven't figured out. It's just.
And that's what's so exciting, is that we're learning something new all the time. Even something like CBD, we don't know exactly how it works still, even with all the research that's going on. So its exact mechanism of action is kind of unknown, although we do know it interacts with over 65 molecular targets in the human body, which is why I think some people are like, CBD can't be good for everything, but it's good for quite a few things because of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've ever gone into a store or you've talked to somebody or a practitioner like you, yeah, I mean, it does almost seem like, oh, this is way too good to be true. I mean, it helps with everything. But when you think about it from the physiological perspective, like we're talking about with all these different receptors, then it makes sense to me that, wow, it could be used really for almost any kind of illness or issue, or you name it.
Yeah. I mean, think about that endocannabinoid system, like this master puppeteer, right? I mean, I even use it for wound healing and really remarkable things that you can use cannabis for.
Yeah. And I'm sure people are excited to hear pets as well. It's safe for your animals.
Absolutely. It's great for joint pains, arthritis, a whole slew of other conditions. But I feel like most people are looking for help with their pets for arthritis.
Yeah, it's funny. I think most people are looking for help for their pets before themselves.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And that's why I always like to say, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. Like, we have to make sure you're healthy so you can keep taking care of everyone else.
I know that is so true. That is so true. Yeah, it just is really amazing. Like, all of this information that's coming out now, and, what people are learning. And I hope that this is helping people. If there's anybody out there listening that really has been scared about it, or, had some prejudice towards it or whatever, that it really is a medical science. And, like we're saying, it's been around for forever. And probably, we should have all been using it all along, because the plant medicine is there for a reason. And there might even be some, negative effects of not using it.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing, right? With these deficiencies. And it makes us curious as to, one day I'm sure we'll know exactly how it came about with all the great research that's going on. But as far as finding more information, I am a cannabis educator. I love the opportunity to teach groups about it, whether they're practitioners or physicians, or even support groups for different disease states, because it is tricky. It's hard to find the right information.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, so we appreciate everything that you've been talking to us about today, for sure. We're going to take another quick break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Before we take a break, you can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And you can learn more about Uzma Zakir at www.bloomHigher.com. That's BLOOM-HIGHER.com. And when we come back, we'll be talking more about medical cannabis with Usma. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I am talking today with Uzma Zakir. You can learn more about her at www.bloom-higher.com. That's BLOOM-HIGHER.com. We've been talking about all things related to medical cannabis. So I know you have some incredible case studies. You mentioned one about the woman who had Lyme disease in our past segment, but I know you have worked with people with autism and anything you want to tell us, because I'm sure people are really interested to hear. Many people might be dealing with, some of these different illnesses.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Yeah, there's a couple of really great things that I would say I really enjoy helping people come off of some of their medications, whether it is benzodiazepines, very high doses, different types of antidepressants, and of course the opioids, whether it's like the Vicodin or the Oxycontin or the oxycodone. And it's a process that I really love to be involved in, right? Because we're different. We're not just going to, tell someone to take this and not see them for 6 months. So with all of my consults, you have full access to me for 4 weeks via email or text. Because again, what I've learned from my experience is that the first 2 to 4 weeks, it does, you'll have a lot of questions and there'll be a little bit of hand holding. And I'm happy to do that because really my goal is to just have you successful in your life with your health. So really, I had a woman, a remarkable young woman in her 30s. She was a single mother, fully properly prescribed. She was up to have very high doses of Valium and Xanax a day. And when she would start coming in, this is when I was still at the dispensary, she would have her hood up, sunglasses on, wanting to take as little space as possible, she just wasn't really there, right? It's almost like sometimes we get into these situations where we almost disappear. We don't feel confident or comfortable in our skin. I started working with her. She was able to taper down slowly and very safely. Again, I give people the right tools if they have a flare during their withdrawal, for example. So she was able to come off of her meds, and we did that in 6 to 9 months. And I was able to see her a year after I started. I didn't even recognize her. Wow. She came in, her hair was done, her eyes were bright, she was smiling. I was like, is that you? She was like, yeah, look at me. And now because of that, her son is thriving too. Her son is better because he has a healthier, happier mom. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely helping people come off of those pesky medications. It's not easy, but it's something that I do stay committed to that process. For autism, I've been working with an adult autistic patient. I've been working with his parents. He's in his early 30s, and actually just today, and it's been about maybe a little over 6 months, but the mom texted me a really nice message. So I just wanted to read it. She said, thanks to you and his life skills aid, this is the best year he has had in a long time, especially in relation to his seasonal affect disorder. Oh. I mean, and that's a gift, that's a gift for their whole family, where the disruptive episodes of rage and things like that can be, squashed down from 5 to 7 hours to 45 minutes, and everyone can get on with their day and their time together. I feel like that's just a wondrous gift to give to a family, right? Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely. It's beautiful.
Yeah. There's got to be so many stories like that. It's got to be so rewarding for you, for sure.
Yeah, it is. It definitely gets me to keep going, keep learning more, keep researching, and just keep working hard.
Yeah, one of the things we were talking about when we were on break is you've also worked with patients who have MS or ALS. That's really fascinating too. So
Yeah, I was working really closely for quite some time with one particular ALS patient. I was working with the caregiver. So with some conditions, I'll work mostly, of course, with the caregiver than with the actual patient. Um, and same thing, it's a process, right? It's a process, understanding the current conditions. And what I always keep in mind is staying ahead of any possibilities of new symptoms that might come from a disease as debilitating, as ALS or even MS. So it's really a balance for me of finding the right dosage of the right cannabinoid for the immediate symptom, but making sure it's enough to help in that long term. So it's this balance that I'm always looking for patients. But this patient had a lot of anxiety with the ALS symptoms. And between, his wife, who is the caregiver, and their age that would come in, you start seeing these symptoms, right? He can't swallow anymore. Okay, so let's switch him from capsules to oils and oral solutions. Some patients might have a G tube, for example. So it's working with the right medications. And a lot of cannabis is oily also, right? So you have to make sure that it's nothing too oil-based that's going to block anything. And then it's really seeing that relief. ALS is so tricky, right? But seeing that relief, the muscles relax, the spasming, if that's what it is. And then the fear. And as you were saying earlier about getting diagnosed with a long-term illness that's also terminal, is that we want to help with that fear, alleviate that fear, so their day-to-day and their interactions with their loved ones also, again, are improved. So tricky, but also finding relief for the patient as well as the caregiver. That's something I'm always mindful also, because, we don't want the caregivers to get burnt out as well.
Right. Yeah, God, this could be huge for a caregiver as well.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
with
it is.
their fatigue and anxiety and all that over everything that's happening to their loved one, of course.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of times without realizing it, we're kind of radiating these like stress inducing vibes. And so I like to try to help people calm that down and kind of find your core. But a lot of us don't know what wellness looks or feels like. So when people have been sick for quite some time, or not even very sick, we're just busy and we're not really taught to be mindful, is introducing concepts of wellness. So what does that look like? What does that sound like? How do you speak when you're calm? How do you respond instead of react? Okay, maybe if you can take this 30 minutes before what is going to be a stressful situation, and then you have some tools on like how to take a breath and respond, just your things start going a whole lot better. And then when we're radiating calm, our loved ones around us also can kind of get that kind of zen going. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we just have a couple more minutes, but I want to make sure that you had a chance to talk about the Recovery Network of Programs in Bridgeport. That's a nonprofit social service agency that you do a lot of work with.
Yes, I'm on the board of directors. That was really important to me because I was working in Bridgeport during the height of that opioid epidemic, and they have some really great services. They have outpatient services, so like intensive care. They also have inpatient services to help with mental health as well as housing crisis or homeless issues. Medicated assisted treatment programs that also offer counseling. So if anyone, I just want to give their phone number if anyone's in the Connecticut area and is looking for help with any type of substance use disorder, any homelessness issues or mental health. Their phone number for their intake is 203-929-1954. I'm particularly proud of their community response initiative, where they've partnered with the Stamford Police Department and also the Stratford Police Department, where they've had a social worker go out on calls with them. And it's been a phenomenal change for the police department as well as for the community, where instead of being arrested or kind of left alone, people are really getting brought in to get the services that they need, getting in contact with family. They have a great story about a woman who had been missing for 8 years, and she was reunited with her family through this service. Wow. I mean, it's beautiful. Yeah. So I'm really proud to be a part of it.
That's amazing. Yeah. And also for yourself, you practice in person, but also virtually as well, correct?
Yes. So I'm available for anyone in the country for a virtual visit. I can work with their dispensaries in their area if that's what we choose to do. But most of the minor cannabinoids are able to cross state lines, so you can get that shipped to your home. And then the in-person sessions in Stamford are quite unique. They've been really beautiful.
Well, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all of this amazing information. We probably could fill a whole other podcast on, like I said, just the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, this is just the tip of the
But
iceberg on everything. So
it
we could
is. But
cover
hopefully
everything.
we've piqued people's interest and we've dispelled some myths and all that good stuff. So I appreciate all your time and all your great information. And again, if people want to reach out to you, your website is www.bloom-higher.com. And thank you again so much, Usma. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. This has been great. I'm really appreciative. Have a wonderful night.
You too. I want to thank all of you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays of the month at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Next time on the show, we will be discussing more about the power of thoughts and beliefs and the impact they have on your life. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time. Yay!
Thank you. That was wonderful. We should do this again and we could get into more in depth, or if you ever just want to chat with me, I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I'm sure we'll be in touch, just working through the magazine together. But yeah, it was my pleasure. It was great. So
awesome.
Yeah, Emily will get this to me as soon as she gets it edited, and then I'll get everything to you. And like I said, we send everything out in an e-blast, and after the show actually airs on January 4th, then everything will be live. You can post it on your website and put it out to your social media and all that.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm so appreciative. Okay,
yeah.
bye.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.